Well, the High Court in Pretoria is expected to hear the third and final argument today. This is in the challenge against Home Affairs Minister Dr. Motsoaledi's decision to terminate the Zimbabwe Exemption Permit or ZEP program. The full bench is expected to hear arguments from the Zimbabwe Exemption Permit Holders Association and others, as well as the African Amity NPC, who are applicants in the matter. SABC News reporter Canny Maphanga is with us in studio to take us through what we can expect today. Canny, a good morning to you. I think before we even get into what we're expecting today, I'm keen to hear about these two organizations that are going to be making their final arguments today. These are all essentially organizations that we really started to hear about last year when this conversation around ZEP really started in the country, right?
Well, I think it's important to just give a synopsis of where we are right now. We're in the final day of these hearings to the challenge of the minister's decision to terminate the ZEP. When we started on Tuesday, we heard from the Helen Suzman Foundation over 2 days, I think, where they argued that they're not necessarily asking the court to come in and change the decision of the minister, but rather they're saying because it's such an important decision and it has such adverse impacts on the almost 180,000 holders and their many dependents, that the important step of consultation rather needed to take place, i.e. the holders themselves needed to have a voice in that decision-making process that would affect their lives after living in the country for 14 years. So they've had that permit since 2009. It was introduced against the backdrop of Zimbabweans fleeing into the country, running away from political violence in their country, and it was renewed every 3 to 4 years. And then when the last renewal was due, that was when they said that the permit was going to expire, and of course there was a grace period of 12 months. And holders are saying that for that decision to be made, they needed to be consulted. They're arguing that it is an administrative decision. However, the minister is saying that it was a policy decision, and because of that, they didn't have the legal obligation to consult with the holders, and they gave them alternatives such as you can have mainstream visas and waivers, but we know the complications that come with that because the Home Affairs Department is dealing with a huge backlog. And they don't have the capacity to deal with the number of applications that would be coming through from that. Then we move to the Zimbabwe Immigration Federation. That's the second application. What they're stating is that there must be protection for those holders come the 1st of July. So when the ZEP expires on the 30th of June 2023, you essentially become undocumented, so you become liable for deportation, to get arrested. But these are people that have, we're told they have bonds, loans, families, children in school, homes, etc. like that. So to make such a drastic change to their lives, and you would need to consider that there needs to be that protection until the legal options have been explored in full. So that's where we are right now with the case, and we'll be hearing from African Amity this morning from 10 a.m. with 29 other ZEP holders.
I think there's a big question, and you talk about the kind of protection that they would need from the 1st of July. I think there's something to be said about just how big of a population we're talking about. And when we talk about ZEP holders in South Africa, it is quite a substantial amount of people.
I think the argument is that in terms of the concern, which is illegal migration, the figure of documented ZEP holders is quite a small fraction in the number of illegal migrants or undocumented migrants that are actually living in South Africa. So the argument is that although it is temporary, it is a legal document and they did enter the country lawfully. So there are existing rights that exist under the Constitution as well as rights as ZEP holders that they're asking the court to consider before making such or allowing the minister, if I can put it that way, to make such a drastic decision that will completely turn their lives around.
Yeah, that's something like 160,000 ZEP holders. So you're right, a substantial amount, but in comparison to the numbers of Zimbabweans that are living in South Africa, quite a small number. So let's talk a little bit about when things kick off today, and really what happens after this, right?
Okay, so there are essentially 3 applications that we're looking at. So we understand in the first application, which is the Helen Suzman Foundation, both parties are standing their grounds in that matter. The judgment has been reserved in that particular application. The second one, we heard yesterday that the counsel, Advocate Tembeka Ngcukaitobi, informed the court that there was some form of proposed settlement that was on the table in that particular second application. We don't know what the details of that settlement is, but we understand that the parties are negotiating with that regard. So it may happen that that case doesn't need to be finalized in the court. They may actually just settle as the two parties.
Yeah.
And then we think with this last application that the remedy that they're seeking might be completely different. They might actually not want the court to allow, if I could put it that way, the Minister of Home Affairs to actually continue with phasing out of this regime of the special dispensation of the Zimbabwean Exemption Permit.